Welcome, ghouls, to today's episode of Mental Health is Horrifying. I'm your horror Barbie host of darkness, Candace Green, psychotherapist and all-around spooky bitch, podcasting from my bat-filled cave in Toronto, Canada. My favorite part about going to the movies is watching the trailers. Like, if you could go to a 2-hour screening of upcoming movie trailers and it's just that, I would totally go. I get especially excited when I get to see trailers for new horror movies that are coming out. Don't you just love that feeling? They're like these little treats, getting you all excited for what's to come. So there I was, sitting in the movie theater, and the trailer for Undertone starts. I thought, ooh, a horror movie about a podcast? Hello, this is so cool. Except it wasn't cool. It wasn't cool at all. It was absolutely horrifying. Just the trailer. Without being able to tell entirely what this movie was going to be about, the visuals, this deep, dark feeling of dread, the demonic possessions, the scary old house where absolutely nothing good could happen, and worst of all, the sounds. Very scary sounds. Scary, possessed sounding voices, deep, dissonant, dark sounds that found the deepest, most unsettled place inside of me and said, yeah, girl, you're absolutely never watching this movie. And yet here we are. I am here for you, my ghouls. I have watched this deeply, profoundly unsettling, very scary movie, because despite being a horror baby, it really did look very interesting. And B, because it's a Canadian horror movie. And I wasn't about to be a bad Canadian and not watch it. Go Canada, I guess. In my episode on Long Legs, I talk about the intrusive thoughts that Nicolas Cage triggered for me through his horrifying portrayal of a doll-loving serial killer who secretly lives in your basement. Up until now, I would say that Long Legs was the last movie that truly scared me. But now, that honor goes to Canadian horror Undertone. The movie's tagline is, the scariest movie you'll ever hear. And yes, that is absolutely correct. There are so many scary things about Undertone, but by far, the scariest thing is the audio production. The recordings they listen to, the voices, all the sounds. I'm going to make this a spoiler-free episode so you can still get the chance to enjoy this horrifying movie if you haven't seen it, so I won't reveal what happens, but I will tell you what this movie made me think about. While the audio recordings in Undertone have negative effects on those who listen to them, I also began thinking about how sound can have the opposite effect as well. I thought about how, yes, sound can be used to effectively scare the bejesus out of you, but it can also repair attachment wounds, relax your nervous system, and connect with deep parts of your human psyche. Okay, so let's get right into it. Let's check out Undertone and explore how sound can help heal or curse you. Like I said, this episode is spoiler-free, so here's my mini synopsis of Undertone, because I don't want to ruin this horrifying jewel of a movie for you. So here it goes. Evie is a young woman currently living alone with her dying mother, for whom she is the primary caregiver. Though she has a boyfriend who seems like a total deadbeat, Evie is quite isolated in her role as caregiver. When she's not caring for her ailing mother, Evie and her friend Justin record their podcast called The Undertone, a horror show where they report on supernatural occurrences, which Evie dismisses as hoaxes, while Justin fully believes they are real. One day, Justin is sent an anonymous email containing a seemingly random string of letters and 10 audio files, which they play on the podcast. A once ardent skeptic of all things supernatural, Evie finds herself becoming increasingly unnerved by the audio recordings that her and Justin have been sent, with the recordings strangely paralleling her current circumstances. As she begins to experience supernatural occurrences and fears about her mother's deteriorating condition in their isolated home, Evie is trapped in an immersive nightmare seemingly intended for her ears only. Canadian director Ian Tuason shot Undertone, his debut feature film, in his childhood home in Toronto. This is because he based his terrifying movie on his experience of caregiving for his parents in this home before they passed. The movie reflects the fear, pain, and guilt he felt during that time. Like, damn, Ian. And here's a little Jungian psychological flavor for you. Director Ian Tuason created the lead character, Evie, to embody the guilt he felt while caring for his ailing parents. He saw her as his anima, the Jungian representation of his inner feminine. In an interview with the CBC, Tuason said, "I chose this character to be a woman. I did for many reasons, but one of the things I see in that character is the nurturer, the caregiver, the mother, and that voice inside me that said I was a bad nurturer or a bad mother." The sound design in Undertone is obviously extremely important. Undertone premiered at the Fantasia International Film Festival in July 2025, where it was acquired by A24, and also showed at the 2026 Sundance Film Festival in the Midnight category. Prior to its theatrical release, A24 provided funding for a remix in Dolby Atmos, which means that when you see this movie in a theater with this type of technology, the sound surrounds you in an immersive experience that adds a 3D overhead dimension to audio, making sounds feel like they are moving around and above you. This was particularly important to Tuason and sound designer David Gertzman, who wanted to plunge their audiences into the terror that Evie experienced in her isolation at home with her dying mother. When she heard a scary thud from upstairs, you felt it above you in the theater as well. When Evie put on her noise-canceling headphones to listen to a deeply haunted recording, you heard that recording in the same terrifyingly claustrophobic way that she did. Sound designer David Gertzman handled sound editorial at Premium Sound in Montreal, and recording mixer John Lawlist mixed the film at its sister studio Red Lab Audio in Toronto. While sound layering and mixing was performed to create the deeply unsettling environment in the film, the majority of the creepy audio files were played and recorded on set, with all the room tone, all the noise, all the shuffling, and all the banging, giving the audio a credibility that's hard to accomplish just by layering sounds. With the low budget of a Canadian indie horror movie, a lot of the score that sets the sinister mood in the house was done with library sounds and effects. The lead character, Evie, is played by Nina Kiri, who you might know from The Handmaid's Tale. Her mother is played by Canadian actress Michelle Duquette. And fun fact, though there are lots of other people in this movie, these are the only two that you actually see. The rest are just voices. One of those voices is our boy Adam DeMarco, who I talked about being perfectly cast in Something Very Bad Is Going to Happen. You only hear his voice in this movie, and that whole sensitive boy thing he has going on is used really well as Evie's podcast host. Undertone is a masterclass in showing us the psychological impacts that sound has on us. Repeatedly throughout the movie, when Evie would put on her noise canceling headphones to listen to a spooky recording, the camera would drift. I wasn't lucky enough to have gotten to see this movie in its full Dolby Atmos glory, but that's probably for the best for the other moviegoers. Because when the camera would drift while Evie was listening to some completely cursed recording, I would yell at the screen, "Why you gotta drift? Like, where are you going?" Evie would also frequently do this thing when she was listening on her headphones, where she would slowly glance behind her or turn around, which I have 7,000% done when I have spooked myself out while recording this podcast. The drifting camera and Evie looking behind her because she was afraid is an example of what happens to the nervous system when it perceives threat through sensory input, like sound. While the logical part of her knows, at least at first, that these are just audio recordings and they can't hurt her, the part of her brain that interprets fear, the amygdala, has already been activated and is now causing her body to react as though the threat were real. What she hears is terrifying. Children's songs played backwards, revealing sinister meanings that make her question her own childhood. Recordings a la Paranormal Activity of a couple trying to capture an alleged haunting in their home, complete with cries from a ghost baby and someone babbling incoherent demonic nonsense in their sleep. Her body shows us how afraid she has become because of what she is hearing. The slow turn to check if anyone is behind her, the headaches that seem to come on as dread builds and builds, the slow, quiet steps she takes around the house. There were at least 5 points in this movie where I wanted to turn the movie off because I was so scared. But that would have made it worse, wouldn't it? Psychologically, we need some kind of resolution, don't we? But there was one part in particular that still haunts me and definitely made me want to turn off this movie. And it was the part where the hosts of the Undertone podcast were taking calls from listeners. Evie is talking to one caller, Abby, who begins sharing how overwhelmed she is as a mother and how she doesn't feel good enough. You can initially hear the pain and distress in her voice as she cries, and Evie attempts to reassure her through gentle, encouraging words. And then the voice of the genuinely overwhelmed mother on the other end of the phone begins to change. Her tone begins to change, and the energy behind her words suddenly becomes entirely different, moving from a place of seeking authentic connection and support to something very, very evil. Her voice begins carrying a mocking edge. She laughs in delight at fooling Evie into empathizing with her. Her voice has an aggression and anger behind it that just makes you want to put your fingers in your ears and go la 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 la. Yeah, definitely wanted to turn the movie off at this point. Subtle shifts in vocal expression like pitch, energy, and rate convey a variety of emotional and social information and speak to our primal need for secure relational attachment. You may have heard of attachment framework or theory. I've certainly spoken about it here before. The framework was created by British psychiatrist and psychoanalyst John Bowlby, who described the innate need for a secure base, a safe haven, provided by caregivers to ensure a child's emotional and physical survival. He emphasized that early interactions create internal working models that guide future relationship expectations. Bowlby famously studied the behaviors of babies and how attachment frameworks are formed. Now, think about how you talk to a baby. Attuned parents and caregivers talk gently to their babies. They babble with them. They soothe them when they cry with a lower register of voice and a gentle cadence of sounds that signal safety to their primal little nervous systems. Though primal, babies are wired towards attunement and safety from their caregivers and develop a secure attachment through these auditory cues from the adults in their lives, among other things. Now, think about what it was like when you were growing up. People and adults should still talk to kids with kindness, respect, and be gentle when needed. In particular, we need kind, attuned voices when we experience pain or distress, voices that convey empathy and care. And now think about yourself as an adult. You still need all of those things. You still need gentle, loving voices to soothe you when you feel scared, to calm your nervous system when you're scared or overwhelmed. This never really changes. And now think about all the times in your life when you didn't receive this type of relational attunement through voice. Think about times when you fell down as a kid and cried and were told to be a man about it, whatever that means, or were told to stop crying. When you received a stern, scornful voice rather than a caring one. Times as an adult even, when other adults forgot that you still need that soft, caring voice when you're hurt, but instead you got some version of, wow, you're really sensitive. There are lots of ways throughout our lives that we don't get our attachment needs met by important people who shape our future attachment behavioral systems that guide us in our patterns of forming and maintaining relationships into our adult years. When we don't get those attachment needs met, one way to repair our attachment wounding is, of course, through psychotherapy. One of the most important roles a therapist can play is in creating a safe, attuned relationship with their client, one that can repair attachment wounding. Therapists do this through lots of little minute signals like mirroring, active listening, and presence, and they also do it through their voice. Components of a therapist's voice contribute to the therapeutic process, as the therapist uses their voice to communicate emotions, to soothe their client, and to convey an understanding of their client's experience. Surely you've heard of therapist voice, right? It's when your therapist talks to you in a lower register, where maybe they're talking a little bit slower, and perhaps they're also using different soothing sounds to convey empathy, like ah and Some people find this really infantilizing and they hate it, which I totally get. But talk to John Bowlby and his theory on attachment and how babies learn how to feel safe with their caregivers. It's primal. Now, perhaps you like to be spoken to in a more straight up, direct way by your therapist, which is totally fine too, whatever floats your boat. And maybe this has something to do with how you learned how to communicate and what kind of voices made you feel safe and your attachment needs. In any case, in a study linked in the show notes investigating how therapists convey empathy, researchers compared treatment outcomes for therapists using a recommended therapy voice or conversational voice during progressive relaxation training. The recommended therapy voice was indicated by a decrease in the pitch, volume, and rate of speaking, and the conversational voice was given no specific instructions on how to alter their voice besides to speak conversationally. Results demonstrated that the treatment group receiving therapy from the recommended therapy voice had a significant reduction of distress symptoms. Essentially, The researchers found that higher vocal pitch and energy corresponded with lower perceptions of therapist empathy. In another study, researchers compared muscle relaxation treatment for a specific phobia with either a warm or cold therapist voice and no treatment control. Warm voices were characterized as soft, melodic, and pleasant, and cold voices as harsh, impersonal, and businesslike. Results indicated that participants receiving snake phobia treatment from therapists using the warm voice protocol improved significantly over the other two treatments. Of course, the quality of your therapist's voice will change throughout treatment and during session, but an empathetic, warm, attuned voice is a key component in the therapeutic process and in healing attachment wounding. Imagine if your therapist talked like a scary demon from Undertone. That definitely wouldn't work. I don't know, but that could float your boat too. No judgment here. And now, a quick word from our sponsors. It's me! I'm our sponsors. Tarot is a powerful tool that can be integrated into therapy work to both deepen the psychotherapeutic process and navigate client issues in a way that is creative, embodied, and trauma-informed. It has been one of the most powerful resources in my toolkit as a therapist, which is why I'm now offering Tarot for Creative Therapists. Beginning on June 1st, learn how to confidently and ethically incorporate tarot into your therapy practice, offering your clients a valuable tool for integration and self-discovery. If you're a mental health professional who has always wanted to use tarot in your practice but haven't quite been sure how, join the waitlist for this program starting on June 1st to receive course updates and early bird pricing. You'll walk away with a clear understanding of the ethical considerations for including tarot in your practice, along with creative tarot exercises that you can include in your therapy practice that complement evidence-based therapeutic modalities so nicely. Join the waitlist today. Okay, bye. As humans, we love music. We love it for its ability to help us connect with our emotions, experiences, to lift our mood, or mirror our sadness after a breakup. And even though it's much more expensive than listening at home, we also love concerts. You can tell by how much people are paying for these concert tickets out here. We are drawn to these collective experiences of sound, where the sound is not only so much fuller, richer, louder, and more complex, but where we can feel it deep in our bones and where we can connect with each other. Listening to music live is a much more immersive and primitive experience of sound. Just like early mammals had to be hyper attuned to sound as a matter of safety, particularly at night, in a live music setting, the listener has to sift through music in a much more complicated sense and pick out layers of sound to identify components, just like an animal would need to identify the sound of an approaching predator. The complexity of these sounds influences the nervous system, influencing involuntary processes like breathing and heart rate. The layers of sound, things like voice, timbre, percussion, bass, volume, signals whether the music feels positive, negative, or somewhere in between. These factors are among the reasons why our heart rate goes up when we hear the infamous music from Jaws, why we relax when we hear ambient jazz, or why heavy metal might make us feel on edge if we're not used to it. There are even forms of psychotherapy that place the importance of sound and music at the forefront, like music therapy, where a client can either play an instrument to express their feelings, or where the therapist might integrate recorded music into sessions to help with emotional expression and regulation. Okay, some of my friends think I'm weird, but I'm a huge fan of ASMR. But I swear by it. I listen to ASMR on my noise canceling headphones throughout my day to help regulate myself between sessions or whenever I want to relax. If you catch me out in public, I'm either listening to ASMR or classical music. It stands for Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response and refers to the deeply relaxing tingling sensation, often starting on the scalp and moving down the neck, that can be triggered by specific quiet audiovisual stimuli like whispering, tapping, or personal attention. I don't personally get that tingling sensation at the back of my neck, and you don't need to in order to reap the benefits. But the kind that I like to listen to is some nice lady pretending to be a cashier at an antique store and talking in a really calm, soothing voice. And there are other nice, cozy, soothing sounds like a keyboard clicking or gentle tapping. People use it to help calm themselves down and relax before bed, reduce stress, and melt their worries away. I know it sounds a little weird, but I really love it. There are so many great ASMR creators, and I've linked a few of my favorite ones in the show notes. The filmmakers of Undertone do an exemplary job of creating dread through the layering of sound, particularly towards the horrifying climax at the end of the movie. When I was watching Between My Fingers, I felt this sensation of being flooded by sound. I remember pulling my blanket up over my head and even using it to plug my ears at one of the 5 times that I wanted to turn the movie off. The sound was so overwhelming to me, and it made me feel so afraid. We live in a very noisy world, and it causes most of us to live in chronic states of overstimulation. Silence seems to come at a premium these days, but it's so important for our mental health. Silence helps us to consolidate memories and emotions, helping us to make sense of the world around us. Auditory restriction allows the brain to restore to its default mode, process and amplify experiences of the inner world. When external input quiets down, the brain compensates by turning up the volume on subtle internal signals. This may feel uncomfortable at first, but is a necessary process for optimal brain functioning and mental well-being. Neuroscientists have found that the brain has a default mode network that becomes active in moments of restful wakefulness, essentially when we are not focused on external tasks and overwhelming ourselves with stimuli like our phones constantly in our face. In silence, the brain's default mode kicks in to internalize and evaluate information, integrating it into a conscious workspace. In practical terms, that means when you sit quietly, you begin to process and synthesize experiences, reflect, and consolidate memory. We also become better able to differentiate between signal from noise through this process of reflection and consolidation, regaining the ability to differentiate between what is important and what's just noise. In one notable finding, researchers observed that in silence, the brain can let down its sensory guard and actually restore some of what was lost through excessive noise. This suggests that quiet time is not just neutral, it actively helps the mind reset and fortify itself. On a neurological level, Silence has even been linked to the growth of new brain cells. A 2013 study found that mice exposed to daily periods of silence experienced development of new neurons in the hippocampus, a region critical for memory and learning. Silence can quite literally grow your brain, and for the record, I do not condone animal testing. Alright, a tarot card that I associate with Undertone is the Eight of Wands. This is one of the few cards in the tarot deck that doesn't have any people in it, just 8 wands flying through the sky. The absence of anyone or anything else reminds me of Evie's isolation in Undertone, which amplifies the psychic terror she experiences at home while her mother declines in the bedroom upstairs. There is very little for her to hold on to, and I feel like I can hear the isolated sound of these wands whooshing by, whoosh, and that's all I can focus on. The sensory deprivation I see in this card has both a light and shadow side. On the shadow side, there is fear of being alone, alone with this sound that only we can decipher, that our minds can amplify and turn into something much more horrible, like when Evie's guilt or fear take control. The isolation of sound curses her. On the light side, sound can heal too, when we take solace in quieting the world around us so that we can open channels not for demonic possession, but for deeper layers of introspection and healing. This card also reminds me of the way the camera pans. I hate it. As Evie listens to the cursed recordings. I wish I could see more of this card. Is someone holding these wands? What is propelling them forward? What are they moving towards? I want all the answers. I want this strange card to make sense. Evie wants to make sense of what the hell is going on in her house too, or what is happening to her mother, and even what awaits her mother on the other side of death. Damn, I just got really deep with it. Who knew the Eight of Wands could do that? This of sound in Undertone mirrors the internal experience of grief, fear, and guilt that Evie is experiencing while caring for her dying mother. Whether you have experienced the loss of a parent or not, I think we can all relate to feeling so overwhelmed by what we have going on in our lives or the world, and we wish we could just shut everything out, just for a little while. It seems like something is always calling out for our attention. We hear endless chimes and bells go off, letting us know that we have notifications to check. Phones ring, babies cry, bosses call our names. And there's always construction in Toronto. So what I'd like to give you today is a few minutes of calm. A gentle, soothing few minutes just for you, where you don't have to do anything and you don't have to talk to anyone, and you can just enjoy for just a little while. So I'll leave you here with the sound of this peaceful thunderstorm at night, and I'll meet you on the other side. That, my ghouls, is the story of Undertone and our exploration of how sound can either help heal or curse you. Seriously, ghouls, this is one of the scariest movies I have ever seen, and it is definitely the scariest movie I have ever heard. And how amazing is that it's Canadian? We're a spooky bunch up here. Mental Health is Horrifying is entirely research written, edited, and produced by me, Candace Green, registered and spooky psychotherapist. If you like this podcast, please consider rating and reviewing on your preferred listening platform. It really helps the show to reach all the other spooky ghouls out there, and I will be eternally grateful. And an eternity is a very long time for a vampire, okay? If you're a mental health professional and you're interested in learning how to incorporate tarot into your practice, join the waitlist now for Tarot for Creative Therapists. You can follow me on Instagram at Mental Health is Horrifying, and you can learn more about me and my services through my website, manymoonstherapy.com. Or you can also howl at the moon and I will hear your call. Bright blessings.